welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today we have some spoilers for Campaign 3 of Critical Role up to episode 98. So if you aren't caught up quite yet, I recommend clicking off and getting caught up. So over the last few days, there's been some news to come out of Critical Role, and that is the next 3 episodes, episode 99, 100, and 101, are all going to be a 3-part mini-series known as Downfall, run by Brennan Lee Mulligan. Now this is very exciting for me for many reasons, and I'm going to share my opinions throughout this video, so let's get started. So first of all, I want to talk about the cast for the show because it's not going to be the traditional cast. There is going to be Laura Bailey, Taliesin Jaffe, and Ashley Johnson, obviously typical members of the Critical Role cast, but those ones weren't in EXU Calamity. So this is rather cool that we get to see them in EXU Calamity. The only thing that I find weird is that Liam isn't going to be in this, but he did take part in the original EXU, so I guess that makes sense. So realistically, don't know. It's kind of weird that Liam isn't here. I feel like that would make a lot of sense in my opinion, but, you know, he's not. But then we also have Nasir Dalal. I think that's how you would say his name. I apologize if that's not correct. But he played Bode in Jedi Survivor, which is very exciting because I very much enjoyed that character. So very excited to see him. And then there is Nick Marani. I think that's how you say his name. Marani. I'm not too sure. I have no idea who this is. Personally, I looked at his IMDb. I've never seen anything he's in. So, you know, new face. Very excited to see him. And then there's Abu Bakr Salim. Hopefully I said that name right. He plays Bayek in Assassin's Creed Origins, and he was the one-time host for that Four-Sided Dive episode. So, you know, the one time where they had like a fourth or an extra person there. So, yeah, he's exciting. He was funny as hell in that Four-Sided Dive, so I'm very excited to see him take part in this as well. And then obviously, like I mentioned before, Brennan Lee Mulligan is going to be the Dungeon Master for this. And this is all really cool. I'm very excited for this cast. I don't think there's a single person here who I'm like, that doesn't sound like fun. They all sound like fun. I don't know who Nick is at all, so very excited to see who he is. So yeah, very excited about this cast. The only thing is, for me, I wish they had Liam, because he was the only one to not be in some sort of EXU Calamity-esque thing now. So, with the cast being talked about and out of the way, now I can move on to what the actual story seems to be about, which is going to be the end of Aor. How Aor, during the Calamity, had this, had something, we're not too sure exactly what it is, that scared the gods enough, or worried the gods enough, that the gods called a temporary truce during the Calamity. You know, the war between the Prime Deities and the Betrayer gods. They called a temporary truce to smite them down and basically, like, destroy the floating city of Aor. That is wild. Whatever Aor had in their disposal to scare the gods so much to call a temporary truce and smite them down is insane. And I'm very excited because this seems to be what that is. We're going to be seeing exactly what Aor had at their disposal to worry the gods that much. And I'm very excited because we get to see more about what Aor is. Avalere, during the Calamity, was like this combination of progression of science and magic, and it has a big focus on beauty. According to everything that we know about Aor, they weren't necessarily focused on beauty. Everything was more so focused on practicality, and it seems that it's going to be a lot like different from Avalere. Avalere, like I said, is very beautiful. It had like a bunch of these beautiful looking magical sculptures and like this big ass waterfall that projected a face onto it that gave out the news. And then this place probably doesn't have anything like that. It's much more practical, a lot more like, I get like steampunk vibes every time they walk through Aor in like the main game. So I'm very excited to see like what that looks like in its prime, what the descriptions of it will be in its prime, and I'm very excited to see what the people are like. The only Aorian person who has any like Aor-ness that we knew about was Bolo, and that's like it. You could technically say like Devexian or Frida and FCG, but it seems like they don't have their memories of Aor, so realistically that doesn't count. So I'm very excited to see more and learn more about what Aor was like in its heyday, because it's not like Avalere. It's not just a carbon copy of Avalere. It's much more different, and I'm very excited to see what exactly that means. So for me, I'm very, 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 very excited to learn more about Aor in any capacity, whether we learn about how they made Aoritons, how they made some of these, the engine, and how they captured Dominox, which I think would be really cool for like one of the characters to sort of open up their character introduction as they're inside like Dominox's engine chamber, which would be really cool. And like you can like vaguely hear like how pissed off Dominox is in the background. I think that sort of stuff will be really cool, and I'm very excited to see and learn more about Aor, because Aor is one of my favorite locations in all of Critical Role. Ever since it was introduced in Campaign 2, I'm pretty sure that was the first sort of reveal about Aor was in Campaign 2. So ever since then, I've been super excited to learn more about Aor. So now that we're getting way more than I ever thought we would about Aor, I'm super hyped. But that leads me into the next sort of point I want to talk about here, and that is some of the fan base seems to be against this idea of stepping away from the Bell's Hells and moving into some sort of other side story. And I'm confused as to why. I've seen across Twitter or X, I've seen across TikTok, YouTube, whatever, all of the social medias that I've seen the announcement on, I have seen people very upset and saying that they're going to be skipping these episodes. I've even seen it in my own comment section that people say they're going to be skipping these episodes, which baffles me. Now, on one hand, I get it. They are super quickly after what happened with Abria, and she took, half of 2 episodes over very recently to sort of tell the story of Dorian coming back to the Bell's Hells, and some people weren't all that happy with what we got then. So some people, I understand being nervous about this change from Matt Mercer to Brennan Lee Mulligan. I understand the nerves or the hesitancy to want to watch something like this if it's going to end up being like those 2 episodes. Even though I didn't hate those 2 episodes, I enjoyed quite a few moments in those episodes themselves. I understand where people are coming from when they're sort of upset or, hesitant to want to watch it. But, and I'm going to upset some people here, but Brennan Lee Mulligan is not Abria. Brennan Lee Mulligan, in my opinion, is way better than Abria as a DM. And I know I just upset a lot of people. I think Abria is a much better player. The 2 times she's been a player in Critical Role, I think she's been fantastic. There has only been one time, and I mean, there's only been like one like stretch of time where I thought that Abria was a really, really, really fun DM, and that was the initial EXU. I very much enjoyed her as the DM for the initial EXU. Everything after that, I've sort of been able to sort of find issues that I've had. Kymel is one of my least favorite things to ever exist. And then I thought these 2 episodes of Critical Role that very recently just came out with her were okay. So for the most part, I find her to be better as a player than a DM. Brennan Lee Mulligan is a fucking fantastic DM, and it confuses the ever-loving piss out of me that people are saying they're going to skip it because it's not Matt Mercer. On one hand, I get it because of what just happened with Abria, like I said before, and how people don't necessarily want to sort of have Matt step away if he's not going to be a player or something like that. But having Matt step away in the main story is concerning for a lot of people. And I understand that to a certain extent. But, and I mean, I've never seen a single person say Calamity was bad. And EXU Calamity was run by who? Brennan Lee Mulligan. And this is why I find it all very confusing. Why people are saying they're going to be skipping these episodes. First and foremost, these episodes are going to be giving us way more information on Aor than we've ever received in the past. We're going to be seeing Aor in its heyday, not just in broken pieces underneath a bunch of ice. We're not going to be seeing, bits and pieces of it that have been collapsed and torn away, filled with these monsters roaming around trying to kill everything. We're going to be able to see it floating in the sky in its prime. We're going to be seeing a bunch of Aoritons doing their work. We're going to see a bunch of extremely powerful wizards, mages, sorcerers, artificers, all sorts of people are going to be in this city. Whatever they are, but they're all sort of powerful beings, which is what the players are likely going to be. Extremely powerful individuals. So for me, we get to see this new aspect of Aor, or an old aspect of Aor, in its prime, which I'm very excited for. But then we also get to see more about Ludinus's sort of ideas about why the gods are bad. We're going to see, in his mind, the explanation as to why he wants to release Predathos and kill the gods. Because that is what he told the players. He told the Bell's Hells that he is going to show them this, and then he's going to show the rest of the world this, and they're going to understand what he's doing. So in his mind, whatever we're about to see in Downfall is going to be enough to sway us that he is right. which is just a wild thought, by the way, that whatever we're about to see is potentially going to make us all think, holy shit, Ludinus might be right. Now, it probably won't, but I think it's really interesting to think about. But then the next thing to sort of talk about when it's, talking about why people would be skipping this or why they shouldn't be skipping it is, like I mentioned before, I think Brennan is a much better DM than Abria. The 4 episodes of Calamity are some of the best Critical Role we've ever had. It is 4 episodes of back-to-back-to-back-to-back bangers. It's seriously some of the greatest episodes of Critical Role we've ever got. And they were run by who? Brennan Lee Mulligan. So I don't understand why people are nervous or why people don't want to watch this. Because, yes, we did just get episodes of Abria taking over, and a lot of people didn't like it. But Brennan is just, and sorry if this upsets people, Brennan is just better. Brennan is a better DM in my opinion, and no disrespect to Abria, but I honestly do believe that as far as all of the Critical Role like DMs we've gotten who have gotten more than like a one shot, it goes Matt, Brennan, and then Abria at the bottom, which isn't a bad list to be a part of, by the way, for any Abria defenders out there. It's not a bad list to be a part of. But if Matt Mercer is like a 10 out of 10 DM, which in my opinion he is a 10 out of 10, Brennan Lee Mulligan is like a 9.5, and then Abria is like an 8. So to me, he is only a step down from Matt Mercer. So for everyone to be worried that it's not going to be as good, that is foolishness. We've already seen what he can do with 4 episodes of a sort of, timeline very similar to what we're going to be in. Yes, this is going to be set during the Calamity, which is interesting and very cool. But it's also kind of at the end of the Age of Arcana still, right? So he's already had experience with something very similar to this. So for him, this is going to be like riding a bike. He's going to get right back on that bike and he's going to ride for miles with this shit. And I'm very excited to see what we got. Now, a lot of people are, I get why they didn't like Abria, right? The 2 big complaints that I saw were how long she describes things for, which to me is, totally fair. She does describe things a lot, whereas, Matt Mercer doesn't quite take as long to describe things. Brennan falls somewhere in between. He falls like in a spot where he describes things for a while, but he also doesn't take too long on everything. Whereas I feel like Abria over describes everything, and Matt doesn't over describe anything at all. I think Matt is able to sit and describe things for just long enough before we get bored, and then he's like, okay, cool, I've got you, you know what you're doing already. Brennan can occasionally over describe things, but I don't think it ever gets to the point where it's like, oh god, just move on already. Whereas Abria has done that in the past where she's stuck on something for far too long. And then the next thing is, the biggest complaint that Abria got was that combat took too long, which I think was absolutely fair. They had 2.5 turns, and it took 2.5 hours to get through 2.5 turns, which was insane. The biggest example was obviously Morrigan's turn, which took 25 friggin' minutes just for her to do her own turn, which I excuse a little bit because she's not necessarily someone who plays all the time, and then she wasn't too sure about like the character because they changed the character a bit from the last time she played her. So I understand why that took so long, but it was still kind of rough, if that makes sense. Whereas a comparison that I saw a lot of people making was Brennan Lee Mulligan also takes really long for his combat. Does anyone remember how long 1 6-second time frame took in the last episode of EXU? The difference for that that 6 seconds taking 1 hour, by the way, was it was engaging the entire time. And for those of you curious, what I'm talking about is at the opening part of EXU Calamity episode 4, a tree explodes and a handful of the players are sort of forced backwards and hit by the explosion, and like time slows down almost here for a second for Brennan to describe what happens to the players as they're getting hit by this massive explosion. And it takes an hour to go through this, quote, 6 seconds or 1 second or however long it was, but it was engaging the entire time. It was fun to listen to. You were on the edge of your seat as some of the characters literally died in this like 6 second frame. And it took an hour to describe what was happening to everybody. And it was fucking awesome. It was so cool. It was one of the coolest, most engaging hour-long like time frames in Critical Role, and that's the difference. I think Brennan is able to keep you engaged for way longer than Abria is. So for those who are worried that this is just going to be another example of what happened with the previous episodes, I can assure you that is not going to be the case. I think this is going to be a lot, and I don't mean to shit on Abria, but I think this is going to be a lot better. So there you have it, my opinion on the sort of downfall situation going on right now. I'm very excited to see more about Aor. I'm very excited to see all these players play, and I'm very excited to see Brennan Lee Mulligan DM. And yeah, so I personally think Critical Role is in very, very good hands right now. If you aren't going to be watching it, I want to know why. I need to know specifically what you're worried about, what you're against the idea on. And yeah, I would like to know specifically why you might not be watching it, because and I want some details, right? I don't want to just hear people say I won't be watching it and then they move on to something else. I want some details as to why you won't be watching it, because I think Brennan Lee Mulligan is like so good at DMing. So for me personally, I don't see why people are going to be very, against this idea. But yeah, that's just me. Anyway, I will see you guys on Friday for whatever video I make next. Peace.